Tonight, on First at 9 this Wednesday the 24th of September 2025. Crypto legislation. Sri Lanka lacks legislation to regulate virtual currencies, says the central bank governor. Investing in crypto carries significant risk. Fintech reforms. Fintech must integrate fraud prevention, privacy safeguards and regulatory compliance to protect the financial ecosystem, says Senior Presidential Advisor on Digital Economy. Strike on hold. CEB trade unions temporarily call off strike ahead of a ministerial meeting. Work to Rule campaign to continue indefinitely. UN address. President Anura Disanayake to address the United Nations tomorrow.
Kalin baby so rupial anuwakata. Kalin baby podi hamotamai.
This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, you're joining First at 9, brought to you by Sri Lanka's premium news provider, Derana. I'm Tharindu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. In your top story this evening, President Anura Disanayake is scheduled to address the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly early tomorrow morning. The UN session has already drawn global attention, with US President Donald Trump calling into question the purpose of the UN in a speech interrupted by a technical failure.
President Anura Disanayake and the Sri Lankan delegation arrived in the United States last night to participate in the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly. Upon arrival at John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York, the president was received by Sri Lanka's permanent representative to the United Nations, former Chief Justice Jayantha Jayasuriya, along with other officials and members of the Sri Lankan community. President Disanayake is scheduled to deliver his maiden address at the UN General Assembly at 1 a.m. Sri Lanka time tomorrow morning. In the lead up to his address, the president participated in a series of high-level meetings. Notably, he met with the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, at the UN Secretariat yesterday. During the meeting, the High Commissioner commended Sri Lanka's recent progress in the area of human rights. President Disanayake also engaged in bilateral talks with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, focusing on strengthening diplomatic and economic ties. In another key meeting, he met with US President Donald Trump's Special Representative for South and Central Asia, Sergio Go, to explore enhanced cooperation in trade, investment, tourism, and other areas of mutual interest. The president is also expected to hold further bilateral discussions with the United Nations Secretary General and several other heads of state. Additionally, he will attend a special gathering with members of the Sri Lankan diaspora in the United States. Foreign Minister Vijitha Herath, accompanying the president, held talks with U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Alison Hooker for constructive discussions on strengthening bilateral cooperation and shared priorities. He also met with Indian External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar to strengthen bilateral cooperation and reaffirm close ties. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump's speech to the United Nations General Assembly yesterday garnered international attention as he delivered pointed criticism of the UN and its operations.
I ended 7 wars. It's too bad that I had to do these things instead of the United Nations doing them. And sadly, in all cases, the United Nations did not even try to help in any of them. What is the purpose of the United Nations? The UN has such tremendous potential, but it's not even coming close to living up to that potential. They seem to do is write a really strongly worded letter. It's empty words, and empty words don't solve.
Notably, President Trump delivered his speech without the aid of a teleprompter, which was reportedly not functioning at the time. Another moment that drew widespread attention was the escalator malfunction as President Trump entered the UN headquarters.
And I don't mind making this speech without a teleprompter, because the teleprompter is not working. And that way you speak more from the heart. I can only say that whoever's operating this teleprompter is in big trouble.
Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron, who was heading to the French embassy after his address to the United Nations was delayed for about 30 minutes in Manhattan traffic, as roads were temporarily closed to accommodate President Trump's motorcade. Macron had contacted Trump directly, but his efforts did not result in any relief from the traffic disruption. Macron then walked to the French embassy, which took about 30 minutes.
ඔයාගේ හීන ලන්තයට අපිත් එක්ක යන්න අදම සනස ලයිෆ් එක ඉන්ෂුවර් වෙන්න.
Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe says that there is currently no law in Sri Lanka regulating virtual currencies such as cryptocurrencies and that investing in them carries significant risks. He made this remark during the monetary policy briefing today. He also noted that a framework will be developed in the future to monitor virtual asset service providers and prevent the use of virtual currencies for money laundering activities.
The Monetary Policy Board decided to maintain the overnight policy rate at the current level of 7.75% at its meeting held yesterday. Meanwhile, inflation is projected to gradually increase towards the target of 5% by mid-2026. Reflecting strengthening domestic demand, core inflation is also expected to pick up and stabilize thereafter around the headline inflation target. The economy is estimated to have grown by 4.8% in the first half of 2025.
Last year we had a 5% growth and this year the estimated target is like 4.5%. Any reason for the slowing growth for this year, Governor?
If you look at the growth compared to on the contraction, the first year after contraction 2.3%, and on top of that again another 5% growth of 2024. So why we are talking about 4.5% over and above the higher base that we have already achieved for the country in 2024. I think the even 4 to 5% over and above the increasing growth is a very positive development and it's a good recovery in my view.
The IMF delegation is in town. Could you please give us a sense of what is the flavor of the discussions that you all are hoping to have?
Is to discuss the completion of the next review. For that, there has to be discussion in several areas: fiscal policy, monetary policy, structural reforms, and the structural benchmarks and targets for the next 12 months. All should go into the next review documents that we presented to the Executive Board. For that, there is a negotiation consultation happening with several stakeholders.
ජාත්‍යන්තර මූල්‍යාරම්භයේ ඊළඟ ණය වාරිකය ලැබෙන්න නියමිතව තියෙන්නේ කොයි කාලයේද?
රජය අයවැය ඉදිරිපත් කළ සම්මත වුණාට පස්සේ මම හිතන්නේ මේක අමුදල් ලැබෙන තත්ත්වයට තමයි දැනට තියෙන මේ බලාපොරොත්තු තියෙන්නේ. 340 something like million from the IMF.
ක්‍රිප්ටෝකරන්සි සම්බන්ධයෙන් තිබෙන නීතිමය තත්ත්වය මොකක්ද කියලා මහ බැංකුව පැත්තෙන් පැහැදිලි කරන්න පුළුවන්.
Cryptocurrency, virtual currency scale.
We categorize it as a virtual currency. However, in Sri Lanka, the official currency in use is the Sri Lankan rupee. Legally, any transaction conducted within Sri Lanka must be done in Sri Lankan rupees. No other currencies such as the US dollar can be used without special permission under the Foreign Exchange Act. Currently, there are no laws in Sri Lanka recognizing cryptocurrency as a class of assets. The key concern for us is whether it is being used for money laundering. The CML-CFT mutual evaluation of Sri Lanka is scheduled for 2026. In preparation, we must develop a mechanism to ensure that virtual asset service providers do not use cryptocurrencies for money laundering. We are currently in discussions with the government to establish this framework. Initially, we aim to have all virtual asset service providers register under our financial intelligence unit. Once registered, they will be required to report all services provided, ensuring compliance and preventing involvement in money laundering activities. There is currently no law addressing this. Because of this gap, it is difficult to definitely say whether it is legal or illegal. If there was specific law, we could provide a clear answer.
At the Committee on Public Finance, it was revealed that government revenue from vehicle imports is expected to reach 700 billion rupees, exceeding the initial projection of 460 billion. Meanwhile, revenue from the tourism sector is projected to reach $3.5 billion by year's end.
ඕගොල්ලන්ගේ මොකක්ද ටැක් ෆෝකාස්ට් එක වාහනවනේ
මේ අවුරුද්දට 460 බිලියන්
නෑ ඊට ඒක වෙනස් වුනේ නැද්ද
දැන් තියෙන තත්ත්වය අනුව නම් ඊට වැඩිය වැඩි වෙනවා මෙච්චර වාහන එයි කියලා බලාපොරොත්තු උනේ නෑ ෆෝකාස්ට් කළේ 460 බිලියන් තමයි
මේ මුලින්ම ෆෝකාස්ට් කරේ ඒ ජනවාරි මාසෙනේ
තාම රිවයිස් කරලා නෑ ඒක තියෙන්නේ නමුත් අපිට පේනවා සාමාන්‍යයෙන් බිලියන් 700ක් විතර වගේ එන විදිහක් පේනවා දැන්ට යන ට්‍රෙන්ඩ් එක අනුව
ඒක තමයි මං කිව්වේ more than $2 billion taxes එනේ මොකද LCs කොච්චර අරලා තියෙනවද
LCs දැනට ඩොලර් මිලියන් 1570යි September 16 වෙනකම්.
Meanwhile, it was further disclosed that the tourism sector is projected to generate approximately $3.5 billion in revenue this year.
මේ අවුරුද්ද කීයක් එයිද ටුවරිස්ට්ලා ටුවරිස්ට් නයිට්ස් කීයක් තියෙද මේ අවුරුද්දේ
අපි 2.
We anticipate between 2.4 and 2.5 million tourist arrivals this year from projections based on the figures for August. 1.65 million arrivals were already recorded as of September. If total arrivals reach 2.4 million, billion, we project a revenue of $3.5 billion.
$3.55 billion තමයි project කරන්නේ.
Meanwhile, MP Rauf Hakim urged that the forensic audit into the loss caused to the government through the e-visa issuance process be expedited.
Supreme Court gave a judgment on the visa case. They have convicted the immigration former Controller General.
Now he has got 2 more years.
2 more years. So a forensic audit by the Auditor General. So now this is more than a year now that the forensic audit we requested under this particular visa scam to be done and to be submitted to Parliament. So it has still not happened. So can you ask the Auditor General to kindly submit 20th of November? We had to argue the case that the loss to the government is in more than 4 billion rupees.
We will write to him indicating the urgency of this matter. Thank you.
Trade unions affiliated with the Ceylon Electricity Board announced that the ongoing Work to Rule campaign launched in protest of the restructuring of the CEB will continue beyond midnight today, while the strike action will be temporarily suspended. The trade unions disclosed that the move comes in response to a meeting scheduled for tomorrow at the Ministry of Labour to discuss the matters. Trade unionists revealed that the discussion was arranged following a letter forwarded by the trade unions to the International Labour Organization requesting that their issues be resolved immediately.
The World Education Fair 2025 entrance free. Register now.
The Walasmulla Magistrates Court today ordered Sampath Manamperi, who is being investigated in connection with the haul of chemicals discovered in Middeniya, to be remanded until September 26th, following the expiration of an initial 7-day detention. Meanwhile, a motion was filed before the 4th Magistrates Court today, urging that adequate security measures be provided for Kehel Baddara Padme, who remains in custody for interrogation.
Sampath Manamperi, a suspect linked to the discovery of 2 containers containing precursors to crystal methamphetamine production in Middeniya, was produced before the Walasmulla Magistrates Court yesterday by the Police Narcotics Bureau. The appearance followed the expiration of a 7-day detention order by the court. Investigating officers submitted an updated report on their investigations into Manamperi and requested that he be further interrogated in the custody of the Western North Crime Division under the Prevention of Terrorism Act. However, the magistrate did not grant the detention as the request had not been made in writing. Consequently, Manamperi was remanded until next Friday and taken to Angunukola Palace prison. The case will be recalled on September 26th. Meanwhile, investigations continue over the 705 kilograms of methamphetamine and heroin seized in the Sini Modara and Godallawala areas of Tangol. Police have traced the source of the narcotics to Unakurue Shanta, a trafficker operating from abroad with local distribution managed by Unakurue Tusita, who was present at the house where the drug were discovered the night before but died following hospitalization. 2 of Tusita's sons have been arrested and are being interrogated. In a related development, the Criminal Investigation Department informed 4th Magistrate that 4 suspects, including organised crime figure Kehel Baddara Padme, are being detained and questioned under the Prevention of Terrorism Act. Meanwhile, attorneys representing Kehel Baddara Padme petitioned the 4th Magistrate to ensure his security in light of alleged threats to his life. The magistrate, however, noted that the responsibility for the safety of all suspects in custody lies with the law enforcement, making special orders unnecessary.
Welcome back. Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe points out that collaboration and regulatory oversight are crucial to ensure equitable benefits and maintain trust in digital financial infrastructure. He made this comment at the Sri Lanka Fintech Summit in Colombo. Meanwhile, Senior Advisor to the President on Digital Economy Dr. Hans Vijayasuriya called for fintech innovation to integrate fraud prevention, privacy safeguards and regulatory compliance to safeguard the financial ecosystem.
Themed Empowering Sri Lanka's Digital Economy, Innovations Driving Financial Inclusion and Growth, the Sri Lanka Fintech Summit 2025 was inaugurated today at the BMICH.
Digital economy, promoting or making digital financial structure or financial services is not a cost, it's a net benefit to all the stakeholders. So the stakeholders are first the central bank, secondly the commercial banks and banking, fintech financial services, and lastly the important ones are the consumers of digital financial services. How we all can benefit from central banks. Digitalization of financial services is obviously saving for central bank. They are going to have a net benefit, and also that benefit can basically pass into the taxpayer in terms of providing dividends for the central bank with less expenditure. Second, for commercial banks, it's an investment. There's an investment, there's a return on the investment. Thirdly, most beneficial part, in my view, is the consumers. In terms of saving time, in terms of saving cost. So it's a net benefit for all stakeholders. I think this benefits should be shared equally and fairly among the central bank, the commercial banks, and also the consumer. For that, we need a strong collaboration among all the stakeholders. I'm happy to say that central bank will also continue its commitment to provide regulatory guidance to the financial sector to minimize any risk emanating from the use of technology. There's no trust in the system.
There's an equally competent force working on the scam economy. As of 2024, the global scammers siphoned over $1 trillion, and in Asia alone, over $500 billion. And what's interesting here is that the very same driver, artificial intelligence, the scale of systems, the cost coming down day by day, the trust that can be generated through digital systems, personalization, in this case of scam attacks, technology evolution, and social engineering. All these drivers which we believe are working for us in driving the digital economy are equally competently working for the scam economy. And the barrier between these two countervailing forces is our technologies around fraud tech, cyber tech, and regulatory technologies, red tech. So you can see that the challenge is fast expanding, and that Fintech, in this overall net digital economy perspective, the trust equation will push us back as a country in terms of global confidence in our financial system. So fintechs, I believe, need to address all these areas, not just disruptive innovation. Fintechs need to build into their innovation regulatory technology, those pipes which will deal with the regulators, those pipes and technologies which will open up the solutions to a wider ecosystem. Privacy tech, looking after consumers and business data, fraud tech, protecting against the scam economy. So in designing fintech solutions, I believe that all these components need to be taken on as your responsibility.
Samagi Janabalawege MP Mujibur Rahman calls for a parliamentary select committee to be appointed to investigate alleged injustices in the promotion and transfer of judges. Tensions flared in Parliament today as members from both the ruling and opposition parties voiced their opinions on the matter.
Does the government still expect to amend the constitution as per page 194 of the NPP manifesto, A Thriving Nation, A Beautiful Life? Have preparation for that already begun? When will the government involve Parliament in amending the constitution? What is the government's position on abolishing the executive presidency? When does the government plan to hold provincial elections?
රජයේ පළාත් සභා ඡන්දය පැවැත්වීමට අපේක්ෂා කරනු ලබන්නේ කවදා වන විටද?
අගමැතිතුමිය ඉදිරියේදී පිළිතුරු ලබා දෙවි.
මම දන්නේ මොකද්ද මේකට කල් ඉල්ලන හේතුව?
මම කිව්වා අගමැතිතුමිය අවිල්ල පිළිතුරු ලබා දෙවි.
As I said, the Prime Minister will respond. Also, the opposition leader still does not understand what constitutes a matter of national importance. Here you have issues regarding the court system, transfer of judges, provincial elections and the executive presidency. Can someone explain him what is outlined in the standing orders? In the recent past, judges were promoted based on seniority. Recently, the government introduced a point-based system, the transparency of which is questionable. Therefore, I propose appointing a select committee to examine injustices judges have experienced regarding promotions and transfers. Also, there is a case pending before the Mount Lavinia Magistrate Court, case number 199/84. The case concerns a two-story building on a 32-perch land in Dehiwala belonging to the National Workers' Congress, which was taken over by force. The magistrate issued an arrest order for the suspects on September 9, 2024, but it was not executed. Another order was issued on November 20th, 2024 to immediately arrest the suspects, but again it was not executed because one of the suspects is a government MP. Two magistrates were transferred due to this case. If a magistrate issues an arrest order, it must be executed without waiting for the Attorney General's direction. I previously challenged President's Counsel Maitri Gunratna if such an order exists, it should be tabled in Parliament. No such order was presented. As per court orders, Minister Vasantha and NPP member Ranjan Jayalal and I provided statements before August 22nd.
අපි තිදෙනාම ගිහිල්ලා ප්‍රකාශ ලබා දීලා තිබෙනවා මේ සිද්ධිය සම්බන්ධයෙන්. දැන් මම ඉදිරිපත් කරනවා B299 84 ඇලීරක්
I now present the court case. The magistrate issued an order on September 6, 2024 to arrest the suspects. On November 26, 2024, another order was issued to complete investigations, arrest the suspect and produce them before the court. I have tabled those orders, including the B report. According to these documents, Magistrate Nilupuli Lankapura issued an order on December 20, 2024. There was also an earlier order in September 2024. What I need to clarify is that this happened before we came into power. Claims that the magistrate issued an order to arrest ministers Wasantha and Mahinda after we assumed office are misleading. No such order has been issued. It has been said that Magistrate Chatrika De Silva was transferred to the Casper Magistrate Court based on this case. However, she was actually promoted to District Judge. This transfer was made on August 19, 2025 and she assumed office on August 25, 2025. The decision MP Dayasiri referenced was from September 2024 when she was not the magistrate Nilupuli Lankapura was. MP Dayasiri has confused the timeline. I tabled both orders. That is what I presented. It was MP Mujibur Rahman laughing from behind who misled MP Dayasiri. Please accept that you got it wrong.
Welcome back. The Colombo bourse closed in positive territory today as a result of price gains in counters such as Selinco Holdings, LB Finance and Hayleys. The benchmark ASPI gained 55.61 points to close at 21,338.45, a new all-time high. The S&P Sri Lanka 20 meanwhile gained 7.92 points to end the day at 6,081.06. Market turnover was 5.56 billion rupees. Foreign participation in market activity remained at subdued levels with foreigners closing as net sellers with foreign sales of 118 million rupees. Up next, we have Minal Wickremege from Capital Alliance in our next segment, Economic Outlook.
Tea output recorded moderate year-on-year increase. Rubber production declined during the same period, while coconut production showed steady year-on-year growth in July, albeit remaining below levels seen in 2024. In the domestic money market, the weekly average prime lending rate or ADR for the week ending 19th fell by 6 basis points to 8.07%, while the average weighted call money rate remained steady at 7.86%. Reserve money increased from the previous week, largely due to rise of currency in circulation. Meanwhile, total outstanding market liquidity declined to a surplus of 126.81 billion LKR compared to 178.58 billion LKR a week earlier. On the government securities fund, T-bill and T-bond yields remain stable, and the rupee value of securities held by foreign investors increased by 4%.
That's all for tonight from First at 9. Thank you for joining. Have a great night.